The stars looked different from the bridge of the Pathfinder. Captain Alan Foster stood with his hands behind his back, watching the unfamiliar patterns through the main viewport. After 3 years in deep space, the first human vessel capable of faster-than-light travel had reached Alpha Centauri, humanity's closest stellar neighbor. "All systems nominal, Captain," reported Jane Miller from her station. The young navigation officer's voice held the same mix of exhaustion and excitement they all felt. Alan nodded. "Status of the anomaly?" Science Officer Olivia Martinez looked up from her console. "Still holding position, sir. Definitely artificial, definitely not one of ours." The bridge fell silent. They had detected the object 2 days ago, a small vessel of unknown design that seemed to be observing them. First contact. The moment humanity had wondered about for centuries. "Any response to our messages?" Alan asked. Communications Officer Peter Walsh shook his head. "Nothing yet, sir. I've been broadcasting on all frequencies using the first contact protocol." Alan took a deep breath. Humanity's first steps into the galaxy would define their species for ages to come. The United Earth government had selected the crew of the Pathfinder carefully, the best scientists, diplomats, and military personnel Earth had to offer. Still, nothing could truly prepare them for this moment. "Keep broadcasting. Let's give them time." That's when it happened. A soft chime sounded from Peter's console. "Captain, they're responding." The main screen flickered, and an image appeared. The creature looking back at them was humanoid, but clearly alien. Its skin had a silvery sheen, and 4 large eyes blinked, independently of each other. When it spoke, its mouth moved in strange ways, but the words came through in perfect English. "Greetings, vessel of unknown origin. I am Ambassador Nylara of the Zalarian Diplomatic Corps, representing the Galactic Confederation. Identify yourselves and state your purpose." Alan stepped forward. "I am Captain Alan Foster of the Earth vessel Pathfinder. We are explorers from the planet Earth and the Sol system." The alien's 4 eyes widened slightly. "The Sol system? That sector is listed as pre-FTL. Your technology should not be capable of reaching this system." Olivia couldn't help but smile. "We're full of surprises." The ambassador paused, seeming to consider this information. "Your method of achieving faster-than-light travel is unexpected. Our records indicated your species would not achieve this capability for at least another century." Alan smiled. "As my science officer said, we're full of surprises. We look forward to peaceful contact with your Confederation." "This is most irregular." The ambassador's tone changed, becoming more formal. "I am authorized to establish preliminary diplomatic relations with new species. Request permission to dock with your vessel." Alan looked at Security Chief Greg Wilson, who gave a cautious nod. "Permission granted, Ambassador. We'll prepare our docking bay." 3 hours later, Ambassador Nylara sat across from Alan and his senior staff in the Pathfinder's conference room. Diplomatic liaison William Carter had joined them, carefully taking notes on everything the alien said. "The Galactic Confederation comprises over 200 species that have achieved interstellar travel," Nylara explained. "We have existed for over 10,000 of your Earth years, bringing peace and stability to this sector of the galaxy." "And what are the terms for joining this confederation?" William asked. "New species must demonstrate technological maturity, cultural stability, and adherence to the 3 universal laws." The ambassador's voice took on a sing-song quality, as if reciting from memory. "First, no species may interfere with the natural development of pre-FTL civilizations. Second, no species may develop weapons capable of planetary destruction. Third, all disputes must be resolved through Confederation mediation." Alan leaned forward. "These laws seem reasonable. What's the process for Earth to join?" The ambassador made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Most species require centuries of observation before they qualify for even observer status. Your sudden appearance is unprecedented. You have achieved FTL travel through means unknown to us, which raises concerns about your technological development path." Olivia frowned. You mean you're worried because we didn't follow the same path as other species? Precisely. The standard development cycle is well established. Species typically develop antimatter technology, then gravitational manipulation, then finally achieve FTL capability. Your method, using what you call quantum folding, is concerning. It suggests unpredictable development. Alan felt a chill. The ambassador's words were polite, but the message was clear. Humans were not developing the way the Confederation expected or wanted. So where does that leave us? He asked directly. Nylara's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Your species may apply for observer status. Perhaps in 100 years you might qualify for provisional membership. The human delegation exchanged glances. 100 years of waiting just to be considered for provisional status. With all due respect, Ambassador, Alan replied with a slight smile. Humans tend to work on a different timetable. We'll see. You and 10. The ambassador's expression changed subtly, a widening of her 4 eyes, a slight shift in posture. It was the first indication that the Confederation had encountered something entirely new. I do not understand, she said slowly. The process cannot be accelerated. It requires careful observation, assessment of your cultural stability, technological integration. We understand the requirements. William cut in smoothly. We simply believe we can meet them more quickly than you anticipate. No species has ever, will be the first, Olivia said with a confident smile. The meeting concluded shortly after, with Nylara returning to her vessel visibly unsettled. As the senior staff watched the Zilarian ship depart from the Pathfinder's viewport, Greg voiced what they were all thinking. I don't think she likes us very much. Alan shrugged. She doesn't know us yet, but she will. He turned to his crew. Send a message to Earth. Tell them we've made first contact with a galactic civilization, and tell them we have work to do. As the Pathfinder turned back toward Earth, carrying news that would forever change human history, Ambassador Nylara was already sending her own message to the Confederation Council. Contact established with unexpected species from Sol system. They call themselves humans. Preliminary assessment. Technological development irregular. Cultural patterns unpredictable. Behavioral responses non-standard. Most concerning observation. When informed of standard integration timeline, they rejected it outright. These humans do not accept limitations. Recommend immediate full assessment. They could be either valuable allies or a significant disruption to established order. The Confederation was about to learn the first and most important rule about dealing with humans. Never tell them something is impossible. They take it as a challenge. 5 years passed quickly for humanity. The news of first contact had changed Earth forever. Old conflicts seemed small in the face of humanity's new place in the galaxy. Countries pooled resources and progress accelerated at a pace that shocked, even humans themselves. Catherine Reeves adjusted her formal blue uniform as she prepared to address the Galactic Confederation. As Earth's first ambassador to the stars, she carried the hopes of billions on her shoulders. Nervous? Asked her assistant, John Baker, as they waited outside the Grand Chamber aboard the massive space station called Harmony. Catherine smiled. A little, but we've earned our place here. In just 5 years, humans had established colonies on Mars, Venus, and several moons of Jupiter and Saturn. They had adapted the quantum folding drive to work on smaller vessels, creating a fleet of ships that explored the nearby star systems. Earth had united under a single government for the first time in its history. It wasn't perfect, but it was stable. The doors to the chamber opened. Catherine took a deep breath and walked forward. The assembly room was enormous. Hundreds of alien species sat in specialized areas designed for their different body types and atmospheric needs. Some floated in liquid tanks, others perched on gravity plates, and many sat in seats not unlike those humans used. High Counselor Dravax, an ancient being with gray skin that hung in folds from a skeletal frame, spoke first. His voice was deep and seemed to vibrate the air itself. The assembly recognizes Ambassador Catherine Reeves of Earth. Catherine stood at the center of the chamber, all eyes on her. Honored representatives of the Galactic Confederation, I bring greetings from Earth and its colonies. She paused, looking around the room. 5 years ago, our species made first contact with the Confederation. At that time, we were told that becoming even an observer in this body would take a century. Murmurs spread through the chamber as many representatives shifted uncomfortably. Catherine continued, Today, I formally request that Earth be granted accelerated membership consideration based on our demonstrated progress. The chamber erupted in sounds of protest. High Counselor Dravax raised a hand for silence. Ambassador Reeves, such a request has no precedent. The 3 laws require demonstrated stability and technological advancement across multiple generations. Catherine nodded respectfully. We have reviewed your laws carefully. Nowhere do they specify a required time frame. A blue-skinned representative stood up. This is not how things are done, he exclaimed. You cannot simply reinterpret our most sacred traditions. We're not reinterpreting, Catherine replied calmly. We're innovating. In 5 years, we have achieved what many of your species took centuries to accomplish. We have united our planet, established self-sustaining colonies across our system, and developed technologies that complement Confederation standards. The debate raged for hours. Some representatives were curious about these fast-moving humans. Others were deeply concerned. Through it all, Catherine stood firm, answering questions with confidence and respect. Finally, Dravax called for a recess. The Assembly will consider Earth's request. Ambassador Reeves, please join the Senior Council for a private discussion. Catherine followed Dravax and 12 other senior representatives to a smaller chamber. Among them was Nylara, the Zilarion, who had first contacted humans. She had been promoted to senior ambassador in the years since. Once the doors closed, the tone changed immediately. Your species pushes too hard, too fast, Nylara said sharply. The universe rewards patience. With respect, replied Dr. Eric Daniels, Earth's leading scientist who had joined Catherine for the private meeting. Where we come from, the universe rewards those who make their own opportunities. An amphibious representative gurgled something that the translator converted. What happens when you make a mistake at such speeds? The consequences could affect us all. Catherine leaned forward. We understand your concerns, but consider what we bring to the Confederation. New perspectives, fresh approaches to old problems. Nylara's 4 eyes narrowed. Perhaps a demonstration is in order. She looked at her fellow council members who nodded in agreement. If humans wish to join, so quickly you must prove yourselves. She touched a control panel and a holographic image appeared in the center of the room. It showed a rocky planet orbiting a red star. Proxima Centauri b, Nylara explained. The closest exoplanet to your home system. Dr. Daniels nodded. We've begun preliminary surveys there. Then you know it's uninhabitable, said Dravax. Toxic atmosphere, extreme radiation, unstable geological conditions. Catherine frowned. We've found it challenging, yes. The Krell species attempted to terraform this world for 300 years before abandoning the effort, Nylara said, pointing to a gray-skinned representative with 6 arms. Their technology was far beyond yours. They declared it impossible. The room fell silent as the humans realized what was happening. This is your challenge, Dravax rumbled. Establish a self-sustaining colony on Proxima Centauri b within 5 years. Not an outpost, not a research station, a true colony with at least 5,000 permanent residents. If you succeed, the Assembly will consider your petition for a full membership. Catherine and Eric exchanged glances. The task was enormous. Earth's terraforming technology was in its infancy, but they both knew what the answer had to be. We accept your challenge, Catherine said firmly. The council members seemed surprised. They had expected debate, requests for more time, or even a refusal. You understand the difficulty? Asked Nylara. Many would say this is impossible. Humans have a different relationship with impossible things than most species seem to, Catherine replied with a slight smile. As they walked back to their ship, Eric whispered worriedly, 5 years is not much time for such a massive project. Catherine smiled at her colleagues. 5 years? We can do it in 3. Word of the challenge spread quickly across Earth and its colonies. Some citizens questioned the wisdom of accepting such a difficult task. Others saw it as humanity's chance to prove itself. Within weeks, the Proxima Project was formed. The best scientists, engineers, and volunteers from around the solar system signed up. Equipment and resources that had been earmarked for Mars and Venus were redirected. New ship designs were created specifically to support the colonization effort. As the first construction ships departed for Proxima Centauri, Nalara sent a private message to the Confederation Council. The humans have accepted the challenge without hesitation. They speak of completing it in less time than allotted. I believe they will fail, but I have observed a troubling pattern in human behavior. They seem to work harder when faced with failure. We must be prepared for either outcome. If they somehow succeed, the Confederation will never be the same. What the Confederation didn't understand yet was that humans never saw the impossible as a barrier. They saw it as a starting line. The surface of Proxima Centauri b was not welcoming. Fierce storms whipped across the rocky landscape. The atmosphere was thick with toxic gases. Radiation levels were dangerously high, but none of this stopped the human ships from landing. Chief Engineer Samuel Powell stood in the temporary shelter, looking at the holographic map of their planned colony. Around him, dozens of engineers and scientists worked at a frantic pace. The atmospheric readings are worse than we expected, said Grace Chen, the Environmental Systems Director. She pointed to the red areas on her screen. The Krell data was accurate. The compounds in the air break down our processing filters twice as fast as our models predicted. Samuel nodded. He had expected problems. Everyone had. What about the underground approach? Grace smiled. That's looking more promising. The deep scans show stable cavern systems 10 kilometers below the surface. They're naturally shielded from most of the radiation. This was the human advantage. Where the Krell had spent centuries trying to make the planet's surface habitable, the humans had immediately looked for alternatives. If the surface was too hostile, they would build below it. How soon can we begin excavation? Samuel asked. First, drilling teams are already setting up, replied Ben Martinez, the mining operations lead. We should reach the first cavern system within a month. Samuel looked around at his team. They had been on the planet for just 2 weeks, and already the first phase of their plan was ahead of schedule. A loud alarm suddenly blared through the shelter. Red lights flashed. Radiation spike, someone shouted. Everyone to the shielded areas. The team moved quickly to the reinforced section of the shelter. These radiation bursts were common and deadly. Their first week on the planet, they had lost 2 engineers who hadn't reached shelter in time. As they huddled in the shielded room, Samuel's communication device lit up. It was a message from Earth. The first colony ships are being prepared, it read. 5,000 volunteers have been selected. Estimated arrival, 8 months. 8 months. They needed to have at least the basic living areas ready by then. It seemed impossible, but Samuel felt a surge of determination. Humans had been doing the impossible since they first climbed down from trees and decided to walk upright. 3 months later, the first cavern system had been converted into a vast underground complex. Artificial lighting mimicked Earth's sun. Air processing systems worked continuously to make the environment breathable. The radiation shielding was holding, but problems kept arising. A tunnel collapse killed 5 workers. Equipment failures were common in the harsh conditions. And the atmospheric processors on the surface, their long-term solution for eventually making the planet livable, kept breaking down. 2 Confederation observers had arrived to monitor their progress. The amphibious alien named Tren seemed genuinely curious about human methods. His partner, a Zalarian named Vex, was clearly skeptical. Another processor has failed, Vex noted as they watched humans rush to repair the massive machine on the surface. That's the 3rd this month. Perhaps it's time to reconsider your approach. Samuel, who was guiding the observers on their inspection, shook his head. We're learning from each failure. The next model will be better. Tren tilted his head. I "Don't understand," he said. "You've lost lives, your equipment keeps failing. Why don't you pause to reconsider your approach?" Samuel looked at the alien with surprise. "Pause? We don't have time to pause. We have people arriving in 5 months. Besides, every problem teaches us something new." The observers exchanged glances. Vex spoke quietly to his colleague. "I'm beginning to think that's not how they're wired." Despite the setbacks, the underground colony grew rapidly. The humans named it New Hope. They expanded into 3 connected cavern systems, creating living quarters, hydroponic farms, water recycling facilities, and even recreational areas. 6 months after the project began, disaster struck. A massive earthquake shook the planet. Several tunnels collapsed. The main power system failed. 300 workers were trapped in a distant section of the colony. The Confederation observers expected the humans to finally admit defeat. Instead, they watched in amazement as rescue teams immediately organized and began digging through the collapsed tunnels. "The structural integrity of that entire section is compromised," Vex pointed out to Grace Chen, who was coordinating the rescue. "Your sensors show another quake is likely within days. This rescue attempt could cost more lives than it saves." Grace didn't look up from her screen. "We don't leave our people behind. Ever." For 3 days straight, teams worked in shifts to reach the trapped workers. No one slept for more than a few hours. When the second earthquake hit, they braced and continued. When their equipment failed, they improvised new tools. On the 4th day, they broke through. 287 of the 300 trapped workers were still alive. As the rescued workers were brought to the medical facility, Tren approached Samuel. "Your people did not give up, even when the odds were against them," he said. "Even when logic suggested retreat was wiser." Samuel smiled tiredly. "That's what makes us human." The observers sent their report to the Confederation Council. The humans have experienced significant setbacks, yet continue their efforts without pause. Their persistence defies conventional risk assessment. They have completed approximately 40% of their colony plan in 6 months, a pace that, while impressive, may be unsustainable given the hostile conditions. 2 weeks later, the first colony ships arrived from Earth, carrying 2,000 settlers. They brought new equipment, fresh supplies, and most importantly, more human determination. Among them was Dr. Lisa Jackson, Earth's leading expert in atmospheric science. She immediately began working on the surface processor problem. "The Krell approach was too direct," she explained to her team. "They tried to process the entire atmosphere from the start. We need to work smarter." Her solution was elegant. Instead of trying to transform the toxic atmosphere all at once, they would create protected zones starting small and gradually expanding. She also brought genetically engineered bacteria that could survive in the harsh environment and slowly convert certain toxic elements into breathable air. By the 8-month mark, the underground colony housed 3,000 people. The first expansion zones on the surface showed promising results. Small domed structures had been built where the atmospheric conditions had been partially improved. More settlers arrived each month. The colony's population reached 4,000, then 4,500. They were ahead of schedule. 10 months after the project began, 2 months earlier than the most optimistic projections, Chief Engineer Powell sent a simple message to the Confederation Assembly. "Come see for yourselves." The humans hadn't just met the challenge, they had exceeded it. And they had done it in less than half the time they were given. As Nylara read the message, she felt a mixture of disbelief and growing respect. The species that never quit had proven themselves yet again. The Confederation delegation arrived at Proxima Centauri b with low expectations. Led by High Counselor Dravax, they included representatives from 12 species, including Nylara of the Zilarians. Their ships entered orbit above the harsh planet, instruments scanning the surface. "I detect multiple structures on the surface," reported the Tholian science officer, "and extensive development below ground." Dravax frowned. "How extensive?" "Far more than should be possible in less than a year," the officer replied, clearly confused by the readings. Their shuttle descended through the toxic atmosphere, protected by advanced shields. As they broke through the cloud layer, they saw the surface installations, dome structures connected by covered walkways, atmospheric processors working steadily, and human workers in protective suits moving about purposefully. The shuttle landed at a designated pad where a human delegation waited to greet them. Colony Governor Ethan Phillips stood at the front, a tall man with a friendly smile. "Welcome to New Hope," he said, as the aliens emerged from their vessel. "We're honored by your visit." Nylara looked around, her 4 eyes taking in everything. "Your message said the colony is complete?" "See for yourself," Ethan replied, gesturing toward a large elevator structure. "This will take us down to the main colony." As the elevator descended, the aliens watched the digital display count down the kilometers. 5 kilometers down, 8 kilometers. 10 kilometers below the surface, the doors opened to reveal a sight none of them had expected. They stood at the edge of what appeared to be a small city. The cavern was enormous, at least 3 kilometers across, with a ceiling that glowed with artificial light that mimicked a blue sky. Buildings of various sizes filled the space. Parks with actual trees and grass created green areas between structures. People walked about, children played, and the busy sounds of a living community filled the air. Population? 5,243, Ethan announced proudly, all living in completely self-sustaining conditions. The delegation was speechless. What the Krell had failed to achieve in 3 centuries, humans had accomplished in less than a year. "This is unexpected," Dravax finally said, his voice carrying a mix of disbelief and reluctant admiration. Ethan led them on a tour of the colony. They visited the hydroponic farms that produced fresh food, the water reclamation systems that recycled every drop, the medical facilities, schools, and community centers. "And these connect to 2 other cavern systems of similar size," Ethan explained. "We have room to grow to 15,000 residents before we need to expand further." "What about the surface?" asked a reptilian delegate. "It remains largely uninhabitable." "For now," agreed Dr. Lisa Jackson, who had joined their tour. "But our atmospheric processors are making steady progress. We've already created several zones where humans can work with minimal protection. In another decade, we project breathable air across 20% of the surface." The delegation was then shown the colony's research center. Here, the true surprise awaited them. The humans hadn't just been building a colony. They had been studying and improving on Confederation technology from the limited examples they'd been allowed to see. "We noticed your gravitic stabilizers have a quantum fluctuation issue at high energy states," Dr. Jackson explained casually, showing them a modified version of the device. "We fixed that and improved efficiency by about 30%. The delegation stared in shock. The gravitic technology had been perfected over 800 years by multiple Confederation species. Humans had improved it in less than a year. During a private meal with the colony leadership, High Counselor Dravax finally asked the question that had been troubling the Confederation since first contact. How? How do you advance so quickly when other species required centuries for similar achievements? The human leaders exchanged glances. Ethan considered the question carefully before answering. "Throughout our history, humans have lived in a state of constant challenge and competition. Unlike many Confederation species that evolved in stable environments, Earth constantly tried to kill us. Our planet has extreme weather, natural disasters, changing climates, and countless diseases. We adapted by never accepting limitations." "But the cost," Nylara interrupted, gesturing around. "We know you lost lives building this colony. 17 deaths have been recorded. 23, actually," Ethan corrected quietly. Each one mourned deeply. But every person here knew the risks and chose to come anyway. They believed in pushing boundaries. A young officer from the reptilian delegation spoke up. "Even when told something is impossible?" Ethan smiled. "Especially then." Later, as they toured one of the surface domes where plants from Earth were being grown in the partially processed atmosphere, Nylara found herself walking beside Dr. Jackson. "I was among those who believed this project would fail," Nylara admitted. I thought your species was reckless, moving too quickly without proper consideration. Dr. Jackson nodded. Many of our own people thought the same. Yet you proved us all wrong, Nylara continued. Not just by succeeding, but by exceeding the requirements. Why push so hard? The Confederation would have granted you more time. That's not how we work, Dr. Jackson replied simply. When humans commit to something, we give everything we have. Half measures aren't in our nature. The delegation spent 3 days examining every aspect of the colony. They tested the life support systems, studied the expanding surface installations, and interviewed residents. They could find no shortcuts, no temporary solutions designed just to pass inspection. The colony was genuinely self-sustaining and built to last for generations. On their final day, Governor Ethan presented the delegation with data crystals containing all their research and improvements. A gift to the Confederation, he said. We believe in sharing knowledge. As the delegation prepared to depart, Dravak spoke privately with Ethan. Your species has accomplished something remarkable here, the ancient alien admitted. The assembly will be significantly impacted by our report. Ethan nodded. We look forward to working with the Confederation as full members. There will be resistance, Dravax warned. Many species fear change, and humans bring much change. We understand, Ethan replied. But we also believe we have much to offer, and much to learn. As their shuttle lifted off, returning to orbit, Nylara looked down at the growing colony. Below, what had seemed like an impossible challenge had instead become a showcase of human potential. She turned to Dravax. They will change everything about the Confederation, won't they? The High Counselor nodded slowly. Yes, and perhaps that is exactly what we need after 10,000 years of stability. The delegation's report to the Confederation Assembly was comprehensive and undeniable. Humans had not only met, but exceeded the challenge. More impressive still was how they had approached the problem differently than any species before them. Where the Krell had tried to transform the planet to suit their needs, humans had adapted themselves to the planet while simultaneously beginning a longer transformation process. Where Confederation species might have methodically solved one problem at a time, humans had tackled everything at once, learning from each failure and quickly adapting. 1 month later, a vote was scheduled. Earth would be considered for full membership in the Galactic Confederation, centuries ahead of the normal timeline. The species that never quit had earned their place among the stars. 1 year after the successful completion of the Proxima Centauri colony, Earth was granted full membership in the Galactic Confederation. The vote wasn't unanimous. Several elder species abstained, uncomfortable with the rapid admission of such an unpredictable newcomer. But the majority recognized the value humans could bring to their ancient organization. The formal ceremony took place aboard the Harmony Station. Ambassador Catherine Reeves stood proudly as the Earth flag was added to the hundreds already displayed in the Great Assembly Hall. Today marks a historic moment, announced High Counselor Dravax. We welcome the people of Earth as the 212th member of the Galactic Confederation. As Catherine accepted the official membership crystal, she thought of how far humanity had come in such a short time, from a single planet to a recognized galactic civilization in less than a decade. We are honored to join you, she said to the assembly, and we look forward to contributing to the greater good of all species. Those weren't empty words. In the months that followed, human diplomatic teams, engineers, and scientists spread throughout Confederation space. They brought their unique perspectives to challenges that had once seemed unsolvable. On the water world of Aquarius Prime, human engineers helped design underwater cities that could withstand the planet's massive tidal forces, a problem the native species had struggled with for generations. In the Tholian medical academies, human doctors introduced new treatment approaches that saved countless lives. Even the Krell, who had failed to terraform Proxima Centauri b, requested human assistance with several of their struggling colony worlds. Not everyone welcomed the changes humans brought. Some species found them too direct, too willing to take risks, too quick to challenge established ways. But even the critics couldn't deny the results. 5 years after humanity's admission to the Confederation, an emergency session of the Assembly was called. The mood was somber as representatives gathered. The Devourer swarm has breached the outer, defensive perimeter, Dravax announced to the shocked delegates. 3 worlds in the Antares sector have already been lost. The Devourer swarm was the stuff of nightmares, a non-sentient but highly adaptive biological entity that consumed everything in its path. For centuries, the Confederation had maintained a policy of containment, focusing on keeping the swarm at the edges of known space. Our standard defenses have failed, continued Dravax. The swarm has evolved to counter our technology. At its current rate of expansion, it will reach the core worlds within 2 years. Fear filled the assembly chamber. Species that had known peace for thousands of years now faced an existential threat. What are our options? Asked the Zalarian representative. The Confederation's military council, led by Admiral Krell of the Tholian fleet, presented their assessment. Continued containment is no longer viable. We recommend evacuation of the threatened sectors and establishment of a new defensive line closer to the core systems. This would mean abandoning dozens of worlds and billions of lives. The Assembly erupted in desperate debate. In the midst of this chaos, a human woman stood and requested to speak. Admiral Sofia Rivera, of the newly formed Human Defense Fleet, was relatively unknown to most delegates. The Assembly fell silent more out of courtesy than expectation. The Confederation has been fighting the swarm the wrong way, she began bluntly. Containment was always going to fail eventually. The swarm adapts, it learns. Every defensive line we create just teaches it how to overcome the next one. The military representatives bristled at her criticism, but Rivera continued. We've studied the data from every swarm encounter for the past 5 centuries. We've identified a pattern. The swarm isn't just a mindless mass. It has a central intelligence, a controlling node that directs its evolution. She activated a holographic display showing the swarm's movement patterns across centuries. Here, she pointed to a location, deep within swarm territory. This is the node. Destroy it, and the swarm loses its ability to adapt and coordinate. The Tholian admiral scoffed. If such a node exists, it would be impossible to reach. Any fleet would be consumed long before it penetrated that far into swarm territory. Rivera nodded. Using conventional approaches, yes. That's why we're proposing an unconventional solution. She outlined a plan that made the Assembly gasp. A small, fast strike force would penetrate deep into swarm territory using a modified version of Earth's quantum folding drive. They would deliver a newly developed weapon directly to the node and destroy it. This is madness, protested the Tholian representative. The statistical probability of success is negligible. Rivera's response echoed through the chamber. Never. Tell humans the odds. Despite the objections, the Assembly had no better options. With reluctant approval, the mission was authorized. A coalition fleet was assembled, led by human strategists but including ships and personnel from 12 species. The mission suffered heavy losses. Of the 20 ships that entered swarm territory, only 7 returned. But they returned victorious. The central node had been destroyed, and across Confederation space, the swarm entities fell into disarray, becoming easy targets for cleanup operations. In the aftermath, as reconstruction began on the damaged worlds, the Confederation Assembly convened a special session. High Counselor Dravax, who had come to understand humans better than most, addressed the gathered representatives. For 10,000 years, the Confederation has brought peace and stability to this sector of the galaxy. We have achieved this through careful deliberation, consensus, and adherence to proven methods. He paused, looking at the human delegation. The arrival of humanity has challenged our most fundamental assumptions. They move quickly. They take risks. They refuse to accept limitations. At first, many of us saw these traits as dangerous. Now we see they can also be our salvation. Dravax proposed an amendment to the Confederation's founding document. After much debate, it passed with a narrow majority. And so, preceding the original 3 universal laws, a new principle was added. The first universal law: never challenge humans, for they never quit. In their persistence lies both peril and promise. Ambassador Reeves, attending her final assembly before retirement, smiled as the new law was formally adopted. Beside her, Nylara, who had become, against all expectations, a close friend, leaned over. "Your species has changed everything," the Zilarian whispered. "That's what we do," Reeves replied simply. "It's who we are." As human ships ventured further into unexplored space, as colonies flourished on worlds once thought uninhabitable, as innovations spread throughout Confederation society, the elder species watched with a mixture of concern and growing respect. They had learned an important lesson. In a universe full of wonders and dangers, sometimes the most valuable trait is simply refusing to give up. On 1,000 worlds, beings of all descriptions began to understand what it meant to have humans as allies, beings who looked at the impossible not as a barrier, but as a challenge. A species who, faced with defeat, would try again, and again, and again. A species who never, ever quit. On Earth, children were still taught the old stories of how humans had climbed the highest mountains, dived to the deepest ocean trenches, and eventually reached for the stars. But now they learned a new chapter in human history, how their determination had earned them not just a place in the galaxy, but a law named in their honor. The first universal law stood as both a warning and a promise to the cosmos. Wherever humans went, the impossible would not remain impossible for long.